A decision made in hope. Jenny Martinez stared at the intake forms spread across her kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she held the pen. At 34, she had spent the last decade teaching third grade in South Boston, pouring her love into other people's children while wondering if she would ever have her own. 2 failed relationships, endless fertility treatments, and enough heartbreak to fill a lifetime had brought her to this moment. The decision to go forward with donor insemination had not been easy. Her mother thought she should wait, keep trying to find the right partner. Her best friend Carmen supported her completely, reminding her that families came in all shapes and sizes. Jenny had saved for 3 years, cutting back on everything from coffee runs to vacation trips, building a fund that would give her a chance at motherhood. Riverside Fertility Center had excellent reviews and a success rate that inspired confidence. The building itself was modern and welcoming, with soft blue walls and watercolor paintings of beaches and sunsets. When Jenny walked through those doors on a crisp October morning, she felt nervous but hopeful. This was her chance. The procedure. Patricia Hernandez was warm and professional, walking Jenny through every step of the process. They had selected a donor together, someone whose profile showed intelligence, good health, and a background in education. Jenny appreciated that detail, imagining her child might inherit a love of learning. The procedure itself was clinical and quick. Jenny lay on the examination table, staring at the ceiling tiles, while trying to stay calm. Dr. Hernandez spoke in soothing tones, explaining what was happening. A nurse named Claire held her hand and told her about her own children, trying to distract her from the anxiety. 30 minutes later, it was done. Jenny rested for a while, then drove herself home in a daze. She spent the next 2 weeks in a state of suspended animation, afraid to hope too much, terrified of disappointment. When the pregnancy test showed 2 bright pink lines, she sat on her bathroom floor and cried with joy. Everything changes the first trimester. Passed in a blur of morning sickness and cautious excitement, Jenny told her principal she would need maternity leave next spring. She started buying baby clothes and reading parenting books. Carmen threw her a small celebration dinner, and even her skeptical mother began to come around, knitting tiny yellow booties. Then, on a Friday afternoon in January, Jenny received a phone call that would change everything. Ms. Martinez, this is Dr. Hernandez from Riverside Fertility. I need you to come to the clinic immediately. There has been a serious situation involving your case. Jenny's heart dropped. Is something wrong with the baby? The pregnancy appears healthy, but we need to discuss something in person. Please come as soon as possible. The drive to the clinic felt endless. Jenny's mind raced through terrible possibilities. Had they discovered some genetic disorder? Was there a problem with the donor? By the time she arrived, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn off the car. Dr. Hernandez was waiting in her office, along with the clinic director, a man named Robert Walsh, and someone who introduced herself as the clinic's attorney. The atmosphere was heavy with tension. Ms. Martinez, please sit down, Dr. Hernandez began, her face pale. What I'm about to tell you is unprecedented in our clinic's history, and I want to assure you we are taking full responsibility. Jenny gripped the arms of her chair. Please, just tell me. There was a mix-up in our laboratory, Walsh said quietly. The genetic material used in your procedure did not come from the anonymous donor you selected. It came from a different client who was having a sample stored for personal medical testing. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? Whose DNA are we talking about? The attorney leaned forward. Ms. Martinez, the biological father of your baby, is Senator Michael Donovan.
Oh.
Jenny felt the blood drain from her face. Senator Michael Donovan. The name was famous across the country. At 48, he was one of the most powerful politicians in Washington, known for his work on healthcare reform and his unwavering stance on ethics and accountability. He came from old money, a family dynasty that had shaped American politics for 3 generations. This is impossible, Jenny whispered. How could this happen? Dr. Hernandez looked devastated. There was a labeling error in our storage facility. Senator Donovan had provided a sample for genetic screening as part of a routine health assessment. Somehow, it was placed in the wrong section of our storage system. When your procedure was prepared, Our lab technician retrieved what they believed was the correct sample. The error was not discovered until yesterday, when we were conducting a routine audit. The aftermath begins. Jenny sat in stunned silence as they explained the legal and medical implications. The clinic would cover all her medical expenses. They were prepared to offer a substantial settlement. Most importantly, they needed her to sign confidentiality agreements before Senator Donovan was informed. "You want me to keep this secret?" Jenny asked, anger beginning to cut through her shock. "For now," the attorney said carefully. "Senator Donovan has the right to know, obviously, but this situation requires careful handling. His position makes this extremely sensitive." Jenny stood up abruptly. "I didn't ask for this. I went through the proper channels, followed every rule. And now you're telling me my child's father is one of the most scrutinized men in America? And you want me to just sign papers and stay quiet?" "We understand your distress," Walsh began, but Jenny cut him off. "No, you don't. I'm a school teacher from South Boston. I saved for 3 years to afford this procedure. I just wanted to be a mother. And now my baby is connected to political power and media attention in a world I know nothing about." She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. "I need time to process this. I'll contact you when I'm ready to discuss what happens next." The call Jenny made it to her car before the tears came. She sat in the parking lot, sobbing into her hands, feeling her careful plans crumble around her. This baby, this precious life growing inside her, was now at the center of a situation that could explode into a massive scandal. She drove home on autopilot and called Carmen, who arrived within 20 minutes. They sat on Jenny's couch, and she explained everything. "This is insane," Carmen said, shaking her head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I just know I'm keeping this baby. Nothing changes that. But Jenny, when people find out, your life will never be the same." Jenny placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the slight curve that was beginning to show. "Maybe not. But this baby deserves to be born. And if that means facing whatever comes, then that's what I'll do." 3 days later, 2 black SUVs pulled up outside Jenny's apartment building. Men in dark suits knocked on her door, professional and courteous. They identified themselves as part of Senator Donovan's security team and explained that he wanted to meet with her privately. "The senator has been informed of the situation," one of them said. "He requests the opportunity to speak with you personally. We can arrange a secure location where you will have complete privacy." Jenny's first instinct was to refuse, but she knew this conversation was inevitable. She packed a small bag, left a note for Carmen, and climbed into the back of the SUV as they drove through the city and out toward the countryside. Jenny watched the familiar streets give way to expensive suburbs, and finally to a private road lined with ancient oak trees. They were heading to his estate, she realized. She was about to meet the man whose DNA she carried within her, whose child was growing beneath her heart, the father who never intended to be one at all. The estate, the Donovan estate, sprawled across 200 acres of pristine Massachusetts countryside, hidden behind iron gates and ancient stone walls. Jenny pressed her face against the car window, watching manicured gardens and fountain sculptures pass by. The main house emerged from behind a grove of elm trees, a Georgian mansion that looked like it belonged in a history textbook. Her stomach churned with nerves. What was she supposed to say to him? How did you start a conversation with someone who accidentally became the father of your child through a laboratory error? The security team led her through a side entrance, down a hallway lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and into a private study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves surrounded a mahogany desk, and a fire crackled in the marble fireplace. The room smelled of old leather and wood smoke. "He'll be with you shortly," one of the guards said. Before closing the door behind her, Jenny sat in a leather armchair, her hands folded in her lap, trying to control her breathing. She had seen Senator Michael Donovan on television countless times, watching him debate healthcare policy or give press conferences about education reform. On screen, he always appeared confident and controlled, with iron-gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through political nonsense. But nothing prepared her for meeting him in person. The door opened, and Michael Donovan walked in, and Jenny's first thought was that he looked tired. The confidence was still there, the commanding presence that made him a natural leader. But up close she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The weight of responsibility he carried. He was taller than she expected, dressed casually in dark slacks and a navy sweater. Without the armor of his public persona, he seemed more human, more vulnerable. "It's Martinez," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know this situation is extraordinary." Jenny stood, feeling suddenly self-conscious in her simple jeans and cardigan. "Senator Donovan, please call me Michael." He gestured to the chairs by the fireplace. "Can I get you anything? Water? Tea?" "I'm fine, thank you." They sat across from each other, and for a long moment neither spoke. Michael studied her with those intense blue eyes, and Jenny found herself looking back steadily, refusing to be intimidated. I want you to know," he finally said, "that I had no knowledge of how this happened until 3 days ago. My office received a call from the clinic's legal team, and I thought it was some kind of elaborate hoax at first." "I felt the same way," Jenny admitted. "This isn't exactly how I planned to become a mother." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I can imagine. The clinic has explained the series of errors that led to this situation. I've already instructed my attorneys to ensure you receive full support, financial and otherwise. Whatever you need for yourself and the baby." "I don't want your money," Jenny said quietly. Michael raised an eyebrow. "I'm not trying to buy you off, Ms. Martinez, but this child is biologically mine. Regardless of how that came to be, I have a responsibility. Do you?" Jenny leaned forward. "Because I went to that clinic to become a single mother. I was prepared to raise this child alone. The only thing that's changed is that I know the donor's identity. That doesn't mean you have to be involved, doesn't it?" Michael stood and walked to the window, looking out at his gardens. "I spent 20 years in public service. I built my career on accountability and doing the right thing. How can I claim to care about families and children if I walk away from my own?" Jenny heard something in his voice, a pain beneath the words. "The clinic said you were there for medical testing. Are you sick?" He turned back to her, and she saw vulnerability flash across his face before he controlled it. "No, I was there for fertility preservation. My wife Rebecca died 5 years ago from ovarian cancer. Before she passed, we had talked about having children after her treatment ended, but we never got that chance. I stored genetic material in case I ever wanted to honor that dream. I never imagined it would end up like this." The revelation hit Jenny hard. She had known he was a widower. Everyone knew the story of how Senator Donovan's wife had died young, how he had taken a year away from politics to grieve. But she hadn't connected that tragedy to this situation. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know. How could you?" Michael returned to his chair, and now he looked not just tired but weary, as if carrying a burden too heavy for one person. "The truth is, Ms. Martinez, I don't know how to handle this either. My entire life is scrutinized by the media. When this comes out, and it will come out, both of our lives will be turned inside out. But that baby you're carrying is innocent in all of this. And so are you." An unexpected proposal over the next hour. They talked. Really talked. Michael asked about her life, her teaching career, her family. Jenny found herself telling him about growing up in a working-class neighborhood, about her father, who had died when she was 12, about the students she loved and the dreams she had for her child. In turn, Michael spoke about his wife, about the loneliness of his position, about how he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with grief. He was honest in a way that surprised her, letting his guard down piece by piece. "I have a proposal," Michael said, as evening shadows began to fill the room. "Not a romantic one, just a practical solution to an impossible situation." Jenny waited. "There's a property I own about 40 minutes from here, a farmhouse on 50 acres. It's private, secure, and completely off the grid as far as the media is concerned. Move there for the duration of your pregnancy. Let me provide security and privacy. We can figure out the rest as we go." "You want me to hide?" Jenny asked. "I want you to be safe," Michael corrected. "The moment this story breaks, reporters will camp outside your apartment. Your school will be swarmed. Your students will be affected. This way, you can have peace, prepare for the baby, and we can decide together how to handle the public aspect. Jenny wanted to refuse on principle. She didn't want to be hidden away like some shameful secret, but she thought about her third graders, about the chaos that would descend on their school, and she knew he was right. "I'll consider it," she said, "but I need to make something clear. I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. I'm doing this for the baby's sake, not because I need you to take care of me." Michael smiled, and it was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. "I wouldn't expect anything less from a woman brave enough to face this situation head-on." The farmhouse 2 weeks later, Jenny moved into the farmhouse. It was beautiful in an understated way, with wide plank floors, exposed beams, and windows that overlooked rolling fields. The security was discreet but thorough, with guards stationed at the property entrance and monitoring systems throughout the grounds. Carmen helped her unpack, marveling at the space. "This is like something from a movie. Are you sure about this?" "No," Jenny admitted, "but I'm sure about protecting my baby. Everything else, I'll figure out as I go." Michael visited 3 days later, bringing boxes of books and a handmade cradle his grandmother had used for his father. He seemed uncertain, almost shy, as he set it up in the nursery. "My mother sent this," he explained. "She insisted the baby should have something with family history." "Your mother knows?" Jenny asked, surprised. "I told my family immediately. They have a right to know, and I trust them to keep it private until we're ready to go public." He paused, running his hand along the cradle's smooth wood. "My mother wants to meet you, when you're comfortable with that." Thought terrified and touched Jenny in equal measure. She was being drawn into a world so different from her own, but Michael was trying to make her feel included rather than like an outsider. Nightly conversations as winter deepened. A routine developed. Michael would drive out to the farmhouse several evenings a week, always calling first, never presuming. They would have dinner together, simple meals that Jenny cooked, or that his assistant delivered from local restaurants, and they would talk. Michael told her about his childhood. Growing up under the weight of family expectations, attending boarding schools and Ivy League universities. Following a path that had been laid out before he was born, he spoke about falling in love with Rebecca in college, how she had been the first person who saw him as Michael rather than as a Donovan heir. Jenny shared her own stories. The struggles of her mother raising her alone after her father's death, the scholarship that had gotten her through college, the joy she found in teaching children who reminded her of herself at that age. One snowy evening in February, Jenny felt the baby move for the first time. She gasped, pressing her hand to her stomach, and Michael looked up from the book he was reading. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said, smiling. "The baby just kicked." Michael set down his book, his expression uncertain. "Can you feel it from the outside?" Jenny nodded, and after a moment's hesitation, reached for his hand. She placed it gently on her belly and waited. When the baby kicked again, Michael's eyes widened with wonder. "That's incredible," he whispered. "That's our baby. Our baby." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Somewhere along the way, it had stopped being just a biological accident and had become something real, something neither of them had expected. The first crack in March, a reporter from a tabloid newspaper started asking questions around Riverside Fertility Center. Someone had leaked information about a mysterious patient connected to Senator Donovan. The story wasn't clear yet, but it was only a matter of time. Michael's press secretary called an emergency meeting at the farmhouse. Thomas Riley was a political veteran who had worked with Michael for 15 years, and his expression was grim. "We need to get ahead of this," Thomas said, spreading out mock-up headlines across the dining table. "If the tabloids break it first, they'll control the narrative. We should schedule a press conference, make a statement together, and show a united front." Jenny looked at the headlines, each one more sensational than the last. A united front. We're not even together. "The public doesn't need to know that," Thomas replied. "What matters is managing the optics." "No," Michael's voice was firm. He looked at Jenny. "To tell the truth, a clinic made an error. We're dealing with it responsibly. And we're asking for privacy while we prepare for the baby's arrival. Nothing more, nothing less. Thomas looked frustrated. Senator, with all due respect, this could destroy your career. Your opponents will use this to paint you as careless, as someone who can't manage his own life. We need to spin this. Not spinning anything, Michael said. I've spent my career fighting for honesty in politics. I'm not going to abandon that now. After Thomas left, Jenny found Michael standing on the back porch, staring out at the dark fields. She wrapped her coat around herself and joined him. You're really willing to risk everything for the truth? She asked. Michael turned to her, and in the moonlight, his face was open and honest. I'm willing to risk everything for what's right. And the truth is, Jenny, this baby matters more than my career. You matter more than my career. Somewhere in the last few months, this stopped being about damage control and became about something real. Jenny's heart raced. Michael, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know this wasn't what you wanted, but I need you to know that I care about you, about this life we've accidentally created together. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, and she watched his face go pale. When? He asked tersely. He listened, then closed his eyes. Thank you for the warning. He hung up and looked at Jenny. The story breaks tomorrow morning. The whole thing, the clinic error, your identity, everything. Jenny felt the world shift beneath her feet. Tomorrow? We have 12 hours before our lives change forever, Michael said quietly. How do you want to spend them? She thought about it, about the chaos that was coming, the cameras and questions and judgment. Then she looked at this man who had become so much more than a stranger connected by an accident. Let's just be us tonight, she said. Just Michael and Jenny, before we have to become a public story. They went inside, made hot chocolate, and sat by the fire. They didn't talk about politics or plans or what would happen tomorrow. They talked about baby names and nursery colors and the kind of parents they hoped to be. And when Jenny fell asleep on the couch, her head on Michael's shoulder, he stayed perfectly still, not wanting to disturb the fragile peace of their last private moment. Tomorrow, the storm would come. But tonight, they had each other. The storm breaks. The headlines screamed across every news site and television screen. Senator Donovan's secret baby, fertility clinic scandal, exposes political dynasty's unexpected heir. Jenny woke to the sound of helicopters overhead and car engines at the property gate. She stumbled to the window and saw satellite trucks lining the road beyond the security fence. Cameras pointed at the farmhouse like weapons. Michael was already there, having arrived at dawn. He stood in the kitchen making coffee, his phone buzzing constantly on the counter. He looked up when Jenny entered, and she saw the apology in his eyes. It's worse than we thought, he said quietly. Someone at the clinic sold the full story to the press. They have medical records, timelines, everything. Jenny sank into a chair, her hands instinctively moving to her rounded belly. At 6 months pregnant, there was no hiding her condition anymore. What do? We follow through with our plan. Tell the truth, ask for privacy, and weather the storm. He brought her a cup of herbal tea. My attorney is already filing suit against the clinic and whoever leaked your private information. But Jenny, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. He wasn't wrong. By noon, Jenny's face was everywhere. Photos from her social media, interviews with former colleagues, even pictures of her childhood home. The stories ranged from sympathetic to vicious. Some portrayed her as a victim of medical malpractice. Others suggested she had deliberately targeted Michael, that the whole thing was a scheme to trap a wealthy, powerful man. The comments were even worse. Jenny made the mistake of reading them once and never again. Strangers who had never met her made vile judgments about her character, her motives, her worth as a person. Gold digger, they called her. Opportunist. Homewrecker, even though Michael's wife had died years before Jenny ever walked into that clinic. The press conference 3 days later, they held a joint press conference. Michael's team had prepared a statement, but when they stood behind the podium in a hotel conference room, facing a sea of reporters and flashing cameras, Jenny felt like she might faint. Michael's hand found hers beneath the podium, giving it a gentle squeeze. The gesture steadied her. "Thank you all for coming," Michael began, his voice carrying the authority that had made him a respected senator. "I'm here today to address the recent reports about my personal life. Yes, the reports are true. Through a series of errors at Riverside Fertility Center, Ms. Jennifer Martinez became pregnant, using my genetic material without either of our knowledge or consent." He paused, letting that sink in. This was not a relationship. This was not an affair. This was a medical mistake that has resulted in a child who is innocent of any wrongdoing and deserves to come into this world without being the subject of scandal and speculation. Jenny stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "I went to that clinic as a single woman, hoping to become a mother. I followed every proper procedure. I had no idea whose DNA I received, and I certainly never intended to become involved with Senator Donovan. But now we're connected by this baby, and we're choosing to handle this situation with honesty and dignity." The questions came rapid fire, most of them invasive and inappropriate. "Are you in a relationship? Will you get married? Are you keeping the baby? Was this really an accident?" Michael shut it down after 10 minutes. "We've said what we came to say. We're asking for privacy as we navigate this situation and prepare for the arrival of our child. Thank you." As they left through a side exit, reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed blindingly. Security formed a tight circle around them, but Jenny could still hear the voices calling her name, demanding answers. Treating her life like public entertainment, political fallout, the press conference didn't calm the storm. It fed it. Michael's political opponents seized the opportunity to attack him. Conservative critics called it evidence of moral failure. Progressive critics accused him of trying to control the narrative and silence a woman's voice. His approval ratings dropped 15 points in a week. Jenny watched him during a television interview where a hostile reporter grilled him about responsibility and family values. Michael remained calm, but she could see the strain and the tightness around his mouth, the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Senator Donovan," the reporter pressed, "how can you ask voters to trust you with healthcare policy when you can't even manage your own medical affairs?" "This wasn't a failure of management," Michael replied evenly. "This was a failure of the healthcare system I've been fighting to improve. Medical errors happen every day, and most people don't have the resources to cope with them. This experience has only strengthened my resolve to fight for patient rights and medical accountability." He was good at this, Jenny realized, turning attacks into policy points, maintaining his composure under pressure. But the cost was visible in the exhaustion that lined his face when he returned to the farmhouse each night. The threat in April, things took a darker turn. Jenny received a letter at the farmhouse, despite the tight security. The handwriting was erratic, the message chilling. "You don't deserve him. You trapped him with that baby. People like you should disappear." Michael went pale when she showed it to him. He immediately called his head of security, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Brooks, who had protected diplomats and executives. "This is the third threatening letter we've intercepted," Patricia admitted, spreading them across the table. 2 more were stopped at the senator's office. "We're working with local police and the FBI to identify the sender." Third. Jenny felt cold. "You didn't tell me about the others?" "We didn't want to worry you unnecessarily," Michael said, but Jenny saw the fear in his eyes. "This is necessary worry, Michael. Someone is threatening me, threatening our baby." "Which is why we're increasing security," Patricia interjected. "Armed guards around the clock, monitoring of all communications, and we're installing a safe room in the farmhouse. Senator, I'm also recommending that Ms. Martinez not leave the property without full security detail." Jenny felt the walls closing in. She had agreed to privacy, to protection, but this was beginning to feel like prison. That night, she couldn't sleep. She paced her bedroom, feeling trapped and afraid. Around midnight, she heard a gentle knock on her door. Michael stood in the hallway, still dressed, looking as restless as she felt. "I saw your light on." "Can't sleep either? How am I supposed to sleep when someone out there hates me enough to send death threats?" He stepped into the room, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm sorry, Jenny. I'm so sorry you're going through this. If I could take this burden from you, I would." Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care so much? This wasn't your choice any more than it was mine. You could have just paid me off, kept your distance, and protected your career. Instead, you're here, risking everything. Why? Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. Because when Rebecca died, I thought I died too. I went through the motions of living, but everything felt hollow. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that gave me purpose. And then this happened, this impossible, complicated situation, and suddenly I felt alive again. He moved closer, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. You did that, Jenny. Not just the baby, but you. Your strength, your honesty, the way you face impossible situations with grace. You reminded me what it feels like to care about someone, to want to protect something precious. Jenny's heart pounded. Michael, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know this wasn't what you wanted. But I need you to know that I'm here, not out of obligation, but because I choose to be. Because somewhere in this chaos, I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, terrifying and beautiful. Jenny had felt it too. The connection growing between them through months of conversations and shared fears and moments of unexpected joy. But hearing him say it made it real. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. But I've learned that the things worth having are usually terrifying. Jenny stepped closer, closing the distance between them. When Michael kissed her, it was gentle and careful, asking permission with every movement. She kissed him back, feeling months of tension and longing pour into that moment. Public declaration the next morning. Michael made an announcement that shocked Washington. At a Senate committee hearing on healthcare reform, he went off script. Before we proceed, he told the packed chamber, I want to address something personal that has become public. Many of you know about my situation with Ms. Jennifer Martinez and our expected child. What you don't know is that through this experience, I've learned something profound about the healthcare system we're supposed to be fixing. He looked directly at the cameras. Medical errors affect millions of Americans every year. Most don't have the resources or platform to fight back. Most suffer in silence while institutions protect themselves. Well, I'm not going to be silent anymore, and neither should any of you. He outlined a comprehensive bill for patient rights and medical accountability, using his own experience as the primary example. If this can happen to a United States senator, imagine what happens to ordinary citizens every day. We need change, and we need it now. The speech went viral. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Michael wasn't a politician caught in a scandal. He was a reformer using his own pain to fight for others. His approval ratings began to climb again. But more importantly, watched from the farmhouse and felt her heart swell with pride. He had taken their private tragedy and turned it into something meaningful. The birth in late May. Jenny went into labor during a thunderstorm that knocked out power across the county. The farmhouse generator kicked in, but the roads were flooded. Making the planned hospital delivery impossible, Michael called in every favor he had. A medical helicopter landed on the property despite the dangerous conditions, and a full obstetric team was rushed to the farmhouse. They converted the master bedroom into a makeshift delivery room. Jenny labored for 14 hours, with Michael holding her hand through every contraction. She squeezed so hard she left bruises on his wrists, and she screamed things at him that she would later be embarrassed about. But he never left her side, never flinched, whispering encouragement and love through every painful moment. When their daughter finally arrived, at 3:47 a.m., her first cries cutting through the sound of rain on the roof, both of them wept. Dr. Sandra Phillips, the obstetrician who had delivered the baby, placed the tiny, perfect infant in Jenny's arms. Congratulations. She's healthy and beautiful. Michael stared at his daughter with such wonder that it broke Jenny's heart and healed it at the same time. Can I hold her? He asked, his voice choked with emotion. Jenny passed their baby to him carefully, and Michael cradled her like she was made of glass. Hello, Olivia Grace, he whispered, using the name they had chosen together. I'm your father, and I promise to love you and protect you for the rest of my life. A new beginning. The press got wind of the birth within hours, of course. But this time, Michael was ready. He released a single photo, one they had carefully chosen. Him and Jenny sitting together on the farmhouse porch. With Olivia in Jenny's arms and Michael's hand on her shoulder, they looked like what they were, a family. The statement was brief. Olivia Grace Donovan Martinez arrived safely on May 24th. Mother and baby are healthy and happy. We ask for privacy as we adjust to our new roles as parents. Thank you for your understanding and support. The photo became iconic. People magazine called it the image that humanized politics. The internet so quick to judge and criticize. Suddenly filled with messages of congratulations and support. 2 weeks later, Michael did something even more surprising. During a morning press briefing, with Jenny's permission, he announced their engagement. "I love Jenny Martinez," he told the gathered reporters. "This didn't start the conventional way, but it became the most important relationship of my life. She's brilliant, strong, and the best mother Olivia could ask for. I've asked her to marry me, and she said yes. We're going to be a family in every sense of the word." The proposal had happened the night before. In the nursery, while they were both exhausted from feeding schedules and diaper changes, it wasn't romantic or elaborate. Michael had simply looked at her across Olivia's crib and said, "Marry me." Not because of the baby or the media or political optics. "Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Jenny had said yes through tears, knowing it was complicated and messy and nothing like the fairy tale she had once imagined. But it was real, and that made it perfect. Epilogue. 2 years later, Jenny Martinez Donovan stood at a podium before the Senate Health Committee. Her hands resting on her rounded belly, 6 months pregnant with their second child, a son they would name Benjamin. "Thank you for inviting me to testify today," she began. 2 years ago, I was a third-grade teacher whose life was turned upside down by a medical error. I had no voice, no platform, and no idea how to fight back against a system that had failed me. She looked at Michael, who sat in the committee room watching her with pride. But through that experience, I learned something important. Healthcare reform isn't just about policy and statistics. It's about real people whose lives are affected by medical decisions and mistakes. It's about accountability and transparency and treating patients like human beings rather than liability risks. She testified for an hour, sharing her story in detail, answering questions from senators who listened with genuine interest. The bill that Michael had championed, now called the Patient Rights and Medical Accountability Act, was on the verge of passing. After the testimony, Michael met her in the hallway. He pulled her into a gentle hug, mindful of her belly, and kissed her forehead. "You were incredible," he murmured. "We're incredible," she corrected. Together. They walked out of the Capitol building hand in hand, with Olivia toddling between them, her small hands gripping theirs. Cameras flashed, but neither of them paid attention anymore. They had learned to live their lives despite the scrutiny, finding joy in the small moments that evening. Back at their home, a modest house in Georgetown, Jenny sat in the nursery rocking Olivia to sleep, while Michael assembled a crib for Benjamin. She watched him work, this man who had come into her life through the most improbable circumstances, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the clinic hadn't made that mistake?" she asked quietly. Michael looked up from the screws and wooden panels. He thought about it seriously. "Every day, and every day I'm grateful it happened, because it brought me you. It brought me Olivia. It gave me a reason to live again." He crossed the room and knelt beside the rocking chair, placing his hand on her belly where Benjamin kicked actively. "Some people might call it a mistake. I call it fate wrapped in chaos." Jenny smiled, leaning down to kiss him. The best kind of fate. Later that night, after Olivia was asleep and the nursery was dark, Jenny stood at the window looking out at the city lights. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, walking into Riverside Fertility Center with hope and fear in her heart.